Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, I'm talking to returning guest Johnnie Jae about John Carpenter's Starman. Johnny is the founder of Red Pop News and the late A Tribe Called Geek. Welcome back to the show, Johnny.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think you were on, I believe, I didn't think to check, but you were on my Echo episode, correct?
Yep, I sure was.
Yeah. So yep, you came on for the that fun episode talking all about Echo, and now this time we're talking John Carpenter's Starman, which is kind of a departure for him. Like in like all of his movies, he does more kind of like bombastic, kind of you know very high intensity in a way movies. Not that the movies themselves are high intensity, because a lot of his movies are actually kind of chill. So this one is like I think the most chill in a way. So because it's just like a crazy road trip across America. And it's interesting because they actually filmed it while going across America too. It's like one of those instances where they actually like the production, picked up, they would do some shots somewhere, pick up and move the whole production along with them as they went west. So so it's really cool. So tell me, what are your like initial feelings on this movie?
I remember this movie. I think I want to say I was like 4 years old when this movie came out. So I didn't
Okay.
see it until I was around maybe like 10 or 11, which was pretty young. But, it was one of those films that kind of came out of like the popularity of E.T. and stuff, right? Like there were all these like alien visitors
Mm-hmm.
movies coming out, and this is a departure for John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I love John Carpenter. Halloween, I could talk forever about that. But this movie has always really just stuck with me. Um, and for a lot of reasons, it's really like this kind of story that really makes you think about like what it is to really be human. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you think about the movie itself, like I was probably, like I said, I think I was like 10 or 11 around the time I watched this. And, you're a little too young to understand like the themes and everything. Um, but watching it as I got older, you realize like, whoa, this is really a story that really hits the heart of like what it is to be human
Yeah.
and what it is to like grieve. Because I mean, when you watch the film, I mean, it literally opens with Karen Allen just like mourning,
Yeah.
because her husband had passed away and she's watching a video and just watching all these happy memories. And, then she's just like, why are you doing this to yourself? Go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then she goes to sleep. And of course, this is about the time the alien shows up and he's like scanning. And, it's just like sees this video and, it's just, I mean, honestly, it's kind of creepy too, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, like you see her mourning and if you've ever lost a loved one, you know how hard that hits you and how hard like those like the first couple years are
Mm. Yeah.
of having to like readjust your entire life of somebody that was always present just no longer being there. And here you have this alien who just happens to run across you and clones your dead husband.
Right.
And the way that the body grew, right? Like
Oh man.
that's pretty haunting.
Yeah.
And especially because she wakes up during this, and so she kind of witnesses it.
Yeah.
It's just wrong in a lot of
You're
ways.
right.
But also funny, right? Because um, the way that they have Jeff Bridges, like in the videos, he's very goofy. He's got his little goofy hat on and
Right.
his plaid shirt, and he just seems to be like a goofy guy. And for this alien who has no concept of what humor is or what it is to be human or to understand all these nuances, to come back in that kind of of the in that person like who had that kind of personality and come back in their body. Um, and especially around somebody who loved that person
Yeah.
and was very aware of all these different nuances in not only their personality, but in their looks, because there was that point too where she's like, the nose is wrong. You're not him.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not him. Um, and that really like it really creeps you out a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many times too when you're grieving that you think like just one more time, or you think like, oh, like one day maybe I can clone this person. And the hope is that you create exact the same person. That's the fantasy
Right.
when it comes to like cloning, is that it's going to be the exact same person, the exact same personality. Everything is going to be the same. But, I think this was and kind of ahead of its time in it, and just kind of reminding us that, as humans, all of these different nuances, these quirks, the experiences that we have, shape us. And
Right.
it's not something that can be easily just replicated.
Yeah. No, agreed. No, I think that's what makes the movie very fascinating and this nice little blip in his filmography too, because a lot of his filmography is like, sure, it's the heroes kind of defeating the whatever the bad thing is in the movie, but this one, like you said, is about kind of the human journey, about just life, loss, and everything, and it really hits. And it's so funny too, because I always forget that you are close to my same age, because you do not look like it. You look so young to me that I'm just like, when you said you were 4 when the movie came out, I was like, well, I was 10 when it came out. So so yeah. Um but yeah, this movie comes out like because let's see, because I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, but yeah, 1984 is when this movie came out. So it's 2 years after he did um The Thing. So he already did the crazy horror alien, invasion style movie, which got hammered by E.T. that year, which was more the friendly alien story. And then he gets his own chance at doing the friendly alien story. And I argue, honestly, Starman's a better movie. Um, E.T.'s fine. I liked E.T. when I was a kid. I tried to watch it since then, and it just, I guess, for me, like, the nostalgia isn't there or whatever, and it's a good movie. I just don't prefer it, and I'll take Starman. And even when I watched it when I was a kid, because I remember seeing this as a kid, and loving this movie. Um, and then there was a whole one season TV show that followed up the storyline on this. Like, he comes back after 15 years to reunite with her and his son, which we'll get into. So there's this whole like cool story, and it was like just a one season, quick season, and it was a fun show. Um, but yeah, I don't know, this I like it. It's one of the few movies he did that he didn't do the score on also. um so it's got a different, I don't know, I think that all adds up to kind of a different tone. It's still got like a lot of his visual trademarks. You can tell it's a John Carpenter movie, but with the music being slightly different, there's something more, I think, in a way more elevated to it. um and it was like, after he did, um he wanted to do this because the thing had bombed. And so he needed to do this to make sure he could continue making movies. So he needed a hit. So um I'm glad he got it, and I'm glad that it did well, because it did do well, and it actually garnered Jeff Bridges an Academy Award nomination. He didn't win it, but he did get nominated for it, and it was rare. Like, you think it's rare these days that horror and sci-fi and stuff gets nominations. It was even rarer back then. So It like almost never happened. So it was kind of cool that he actually got the nomination for it.
Yeah,
Um,
like and it's so interesting too because like you said, there you can tell that it's a John Carpenter film.
mhm,
Um, but it really kind of showed his range too. And like um kind of like gearing up for this, I was kind of going over some of the behind the scenes thing.
mhm,
And it was really interesting to learn that the original script um was basically just kind of shopped around for a while, like for almost 5 years.
mhm,
Um, and even when Carpenter, like he kind of had to really personally campaign to get this film made. And, like I'm glad that they changed it because, I was reading where he said in the original script that Starman was going to be flying around like Superman.
mm. I didn't see
And
that. That's funny.
like I don't think that really would have worked. And I'm
No,
glad they scaled it back and put this alien within some human confines because I mean he did have like these almost extraordinary powers, right? That normal humans don't have with those little
right.
silver spheres.
Yeah,
Um, but so I really like that they kept him more human and that he had to kind of learn how to move through this world as a human. And
right.
I think one of the things that I found so funny too is just like the way that he talked. It was
Mm.
almost like like the broken speech that they give Native Americans in those bad westerns
Yeah,
at
yeah,
first. And even like later on in the film, he's with Jenny so much that, he's learning from her and observing her to really to learn how to be human, how to blend in. But there's that part where he leaves her, right? Because
right.
he's like, it's not safe for you to be around me. You are right. And like I did something wrong, so I left and he hitches a ride and the guy's got like this really southern kind of accent and almost like switchblade or not switchblade
Sling Blade. Yeah,
sling blade, yes.
yeah.
And so he's kind of like like when he talks he's using that same little accent, and I thought that was so funny because I was like he's like, oh well, this is a man, I'm a man, and this is the way men talk.
Right.
And I thought that I mean that I just really love that part because it really does make you wonder like how much of who we are, the way that we do things, the little quirks are simply because of the people that we're around. What behavior did we pick up from somebody in our family or friends or just people in our communities and, and it just kind of made me funny because I always wonder too, like when we first started picking up those little quirks, those habits,
Hmm.
did the other person notice?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we definitely model like who like what we're seeing. Like my grandson is now 5, or about to be 5, in a couple of months, and he is like, we got to live with him for the first like 4.5 years. And so we got to watch him grow and become, and also with my own kids, but like, I don't know, now that I'm older and I wasn't like as like, I had that one kind of step removed, even though we were living with him, that you get to see they copy, because that's how they learn, so they have to kind of copy. And it makes a lot of sense in that way, that they model, and that eventually, like as they get older, they kind of find their own personalities. And that's the fun thing, as he got older, into his toddler years, and he got started getting his own little personality, and it's just like, I don't know, it was just so great. And that's, you see this in this movie over the course of these few days, he starts to kind of get his own personality. He's trying to figure it out. So I thought it was cool too because he studied ornithology and the mannerisms of birds, so that in his movements, so that like the way he moved his head and his hands and stuff like that would be similar to birds, because he wanted to have that kind of disconnect between him and actual humans. So I
Yeah,
thought that was a
I
really
mean,
cool thing.
right. And there were also some funny moments in that because, and that's, I think that's the other thing that I really liked about this movie is because, while there is conflict, there's really no bad guy. There's really no
Mm,
villain, right?
I would say the U.S. government is the villain in
Well,
this.
yeah, but I mean, it's kind of natural, right? Because you have
True.
this
Yeah.
alien invader and they don't know what exactly
Yeah.
if there's a threat or not.
Right.
So, so it's not like they're like chasing him to be nefarious. It's just that this is an alien on Earth that they know about.
Right. Right. Right.
And so, like, I kind of really don't see them as being kind of like the villains or anything like that, which I really thought was nice because it really kind of showed that, you know, like, like the whole film is just about the human journey in the to begin with.
Hmm.
And it's the way that we treat each other, alien or not. When somebody that we're not familiar with comes into our circle, your guard goes up.
Hmm.
Um, and if you're not familiar with the way that that person speaks or like their mannerisms, even like the tone in the way that they talk, there's so many things um, that we other them, and some
Yeah.
things that we automatically fear what we don't know. And so I really kind of like that contrast in all this. But also the fact that he was seemed very innocent, like even when she's like, what, who are you? What are you? He starts copying the voice that he heard in the little recordings that they sent up into this probe.
Yeah.
And and he was just kind of like, this is why I'm here, and like just kind of like naming everything that they were talking about, like Earth is home to blah blah blah. And like trying to get her to understand. And I thought that was really funny because as they started to grow closer and learn how to communicate with each other a little bit better, and he started to understand and start questioning, like, do humans do this? Why? And
Hmm.
the part where they're driving and she he like starts speeding, and she's like freaking out because there's a semi coming on the other side, like full with a trailer full of hay, and she's like screaming at him like, what are you doing, what are you doing? And he makes it through, but then it causes a car accident and stuff, and she's like, I thought you were watching me, I thought you learned, I thought you understand. And he's like, I did. I watched you. I learned. He's like, red light means stop, green light means go, yellow light means go very fast.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really funny, right? Because she was like, what do you think? That was a yellow light back there.
Right.
And it was such a small thing that, I think almost everybody does. You see the yellow light, you speed up. Um, and so I thought that was really
Yeah.
funny. And I still think it's funny. Every time I see that, I still crack up because it's just such a human thing to do?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's too funny. Yeah. I um I think that's what is really strong about this movie. Is like, she spends a good portion of it trying to get away from him just because she's afraid. It's this she knows it's this alien creature wearing her husband's skin. And she just wants to get away from him. Understandably.
Yeah.
Anybody would be frightened by that.
Yeah,
Um
and I really like that scene too,
yeah.
where they're in the diner after they see the
Mhm.
deer. And she's like trying to explain. He's like, there's a very empty feeling. And she's like, well, we get hungry and we have to like fuel our bodies. And
Yeah.
he's like, where is this fueling station? And they stop at this restaurant, but they see the dead deer. And he starts asking her questions, and she's like, well, people kill deer, they eat them. And then he like looks at her and he's like, do humans eat humans? And she's like, no. But it's one of those things where it just kind of makes sense. If they're eating this, what's to say they're not eating each other?
Yeah.
And like when they go in, he's very awkward. And she's trying to like make him blend in a little bit better. And he starts asking her questions like, what is love? And you see her kind of struggling with that question. Like, it's not something that she really expected for him to ask her.
Right.
And, she like has like breaks down trying to explain, and talking about her husband. And she's like, oh shit. And he's like, what is shit? Explain shit. And, she's like, you shouldn't say it. It's a bad word. And then the waitress comes with their food and he just goes, oh shit. you know, and and I like that, it just kind of went back into this, it's like this deep emotional moment, but then it goes right into the humor. And, she brings the food and she's talking about the apple pie and, he eats the apple pie and he's just amazed at the taste of the apple pie.
Hmm.
And, her whole plan and reason why she stopped there was because there was a bus station
Right.
and
Right.
she was going to escape. And when she totally meant to leave. But then the waitress, found her and was like, hey, you might not want to leave. Your friend's out in the parking lot. And, she just kind of like, oh, great. And went to go look. And, he's bringing this deer back to life.
Yeah.
And you kind of realize too that even though it seems like he's not understanding or that these moments aren't being fully fleshed out to like, like her whole moment was interrupted, um, but that he was taking in all that information and it was starting to resonate with him. And
Right.
so, he had this, like I guess you would say like knowledge or understanding these powers that humans didn't have. Like, you know, he went out there, brought this deer, and he got his butt kicked because they thought he stole the deer. And I thought that was funny too, just because
Right.
like he was just like kind of like didn't know what was going on. Um, but I really liked that scene too. Um, just because it was that moment when you realize that he's really starting to understand the heart of what it is to be human. Even though it doesn't seem like it, and he doesn't fully understand, he's starting to understand that there's um, I guess you would say, complexity
Yeah.
to humans that he wasn't expecting because, even later in the film, towards the end, he's talking about humans being like these very primitive and savage, creatures and stuff. And that I think that moment was when he started to realize, and her too, to realize that he wasn't looking to harm her or anybody else, that, that it just seemed he was there in a weird circumstance and
Right.
not looking to hurt her or anybody else because that's the moment when she decided to kind of stay with him.
Right. I think, this gets back to, the reason why he's there. Like at the beginning of the movie, we see the Voyager satellite, or the Voyager probe go through space and be intercepted by something, and then an alien ship coming to Earth. And that's literally what he's there for. Is he intercepted that probe, is interested in humanity, comes to Earth, and wants to get to know us. That's literally all it is. Um, and it's it's interesting too because like that's what I think is fascinating about it is like he's got no ill intention. It's like it's the ultimate just like discovery mission. He just wants to learn who we are, what we are. And they have a conversation later on too, because she asks him what his planet is like. And he's like, it's great. There's no war, everybody's peaceful and everything like that, but we're all kind of the same. And so there's no like, and there's singing, there's beauty, there's other things, but there's no um it is just kind of the same. And where in humanity, we have, unfortunately, yes, we do have all this struggle against each other, but there's so much beauty in it, in humanity as well. And that's what's great about the movie is that it's kind of showing you that. Um,
Yeah,
eh,
because there's even that line like towards the end when the SETI scientist guy that's kind of tracking him down, is asking him questions. He's like, there's so much I want to ask you. Um, and Starman's like, telling him like basically like he's there to learn about who they are, and then he tells them, "Shall I tell you what I find beautiful about you?" And he basically says that, as humans, like we're at our very best when things are the worst.
Right. Yeah, it's according to this, it says director John Carpenter was extremely enthusiastic about the opportunity to show America at its most beautiful. Producer Larry Franco commented, "There are an awful lot of films today that focus on the things that are wrong in America. We had an opportunity with Starman to show the good side of America, its beauty, and the beauty and potential of its people." So yeah, while they kind of run into like, bad people here and there, like the hunter and, things like that, even those people aren't necessarily bad. I think the only people who are really kind of bad in this whole movie is the one government dude, like that's kind of the head government dude, and the two cops that try to start
Oh
something.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
the ones who are just, oh my goodness. Um, and that scene was really powerful too, right?
hmm
Because I don't think he understood how delicate we are as human beings. Because when the cops shoot her, he doesn't really know what's going on.
yeah,
And you can see that. And he also doesn't understand the feeling that rises up in him either. Like, why am I feeling this way? Or,
yeah,
um, and then there's that moment where he just, barrels through and there's a big explosion. And he's carrying her out and the flames. And I mean, it was, boy, that scene really sticks with you too, because, it does. It shows that we don't know, like as humans, we don't always make the best decisions.
true.
Um, and it all depends on your emotional state, right? Because you look at police brutality,
hmm
um, you look at all these different things, and when it all comes down to it, it's all about just these. I don't want to say like these responses out of fear or hate or anger. Um, but it's like the way that kind of power corrupts that our
hmm
emotions, our emotional states. It's we don't always make the best decisions in those moments, and you really see that in this. And I really liked it because even though they did show that, right? Like you didn't walk away necessarily thinking like, oh, this is why humans should be destroyed, or this is why we're in the mess we're in.
Yeah,
It's and I really did like that because it really does just make you stop and think about, like about who we are as humans and who we could be. Um, and the things that we take for granted, because like you said, he was talking about how they're all kind of the same. And, as humans, there's so much diversity. There's so many
hmm
different languages, so many different cultures. And there's a lot of beauty in that too, despite the struggle of trying to coexist.
yeah. No, and I think that's this movie does a good job at showing that there is some bad. It does show a balance, but it is very much showing you just kind of the good of people, the good of um because as he's trying to get across, they lose the car, and then they have to depend on others to help them out. Like he gets the ride from like you said, the very southern sounding guy, and then they're in the back of the truck with some Native Americans, and so there's this moment where they're getting this help, and it's just people are generally being helpful, along the way, and it's nice. It's really good to see that in a movie about America, especially in the 80s, the mid 80s. So because don't get me wrong, in today's society, I feel like we are there's it is divisive, but I don't know, the 80s still felt like it was in some ways even more divisive. There was still a lot of hate then, um that was just as open. Um, I grew up with, the slurs that people will say nowadays being openly said amongst people, and then even openly said amongst people who thought they were progressive and liberal. And so, it's times have changed for sure. But there's I don't know, there's something about the 80s that just is still like when you go back and think about it, it's just like that we have come quite a far way. Even today, with it being as crazy politically as it is, I still feel like we're still better today than we were back then.
Yeah, and
So
and I think that's the thing too is, I think that, back then we weren't as connected as we are now. Um, we were all in our little bubbles. We didn't have the internet. We weren't
mhm.
news stations, TV stations went off the air at midnight.
Yeah, yeah.
So we weren't as stimulated, we weren't as connected. So basically, the experiences that we had were very existed within a bubble.
Yeah,
And
very
so,
isolated. Yeah.
depending on where you were, those experiences oftentimes seemed heightened, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and you also, because we weren't so connected, you had no idea whether or not what you were experiencing was or wasn't happening in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I totally agreed that, things back then felt more intense, but also, when you really think about the history, we were only what, 20 years from like the civil rights movements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disabled people were just now getting their rights in the 70s and 80s. And, so many things were happening that were still new for our society.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of pushback, but also when you look at like 80s media, there was always that focus on bullying, and not just like bullying, but think Karate Kid.
Mhm.
They had a whole
Oh,
karate
yeah.
school going after poor little Daniel. You,
Right?
you know what I mean? Even E.T., you had the whole US government going after poor little Elliot, having him almost dying,
Yeah.
and he was an acceptable risk.
Yeah.
So, it was just everything did
It
seem
was a
more
dark time for
heavy.
80s kids, I'm telling you.
Exactly. So, like, I agree, like, it felt darker. So, this movie was really kind of refreshing, but
It really
also,
was a light in that
yeah.
darkness. Yeah.
And I mean, and it's very like hopeful the way that it ends, even
Mhm.
a little creepy, but still, because let's talk about the sex scene. Um,
Yeah.
because
Oh, well,
Jeff
like
Bridges killed it.
so I think this is what's interesting about this is because she knows that this alien is not her husband. She is not like she does not have any like
Yeah, she's not
she's
delusional.
not deluded. Yeah, she's not deluded at all that this is her husband or anything. And so it's interesting that through the course of this, not only does she come to accept him, but in a way she comes to fall in love with him.
Yeah,
Because and not because he's doing anything. Yes, he looks like her husband, but that's only a very small part of it. It's because of who he is that she falls in love with. And I think that's a very fascinating part of this. If you took this in a vacuum, you would just be like, that seems very odd to have that scene in this movie. I'm not gonna lie, there are some 80s movies that there are sex scenes that feel very forced, feel very wedged in. And it's not just the 80s, it's throughout
anything. Yeah, it's
anything, but
always very gratuitous, and
yeah,
you don't really see a connection building between the people.
yes.
And I think that's what really made that scene work. But also, like I said, Jeff Bridges killed it because if you
Oh
look
man.
at his facial expressions as they're like laying there, and the cameraman for being able to catch those expressions, um, I think it really like, oh, I've never experienced this before. I've never felt this. Like this is something that was a little almost it almost seemed like a little too intense for him
Yeah.
um to comprehend. And and you could tell too, like she was having her feelings about it, but it was something that she was totally sure of. Like, I trust this person to be able to share this part
Yeah.
of humanity with, like to be able to have that vulnerability with him. And like you said, not because of anything that he did, but because of who he was.
Right.
And even knowing that he was an alien. And it wasn't one of those things either where she was just curious to see what it'd be like to be with an alien, you
Right.
know?
No,
But
I
I think
agree. Go ahead.
and it was a little creepy, right? Because afterwards, he's like, I gave you a baby tonight.
Mhm.
Like, honestly, no
Yeah,
woman would
that was the
hear that.
creepiness. Yeah. Well, and they had established earlier that she was not able to have a child. So
Yeah. And
so
and I
there was
really
yeah.
and I really like how that conversation happened too, because, she was trying to talk about it, but also try and explain it in a way that he'd understand and not even knowing if he did. So I think the fact that in this moment when he tells her, I gave you a baby, and she again says, I can't, I'm infertile, you
Yeah.
know, and he's like, no, no, you are pregnant, and then kind of explains that, you're gonna have Scott's kid,
Yeah.
because he did use his DNA to clone himself, but also explaining that this is going to be my child too, and he's going to possess like all my knowledge, and he's going to grow up to be a teacher and to kind of spread this to humanity, like the
Yeah.
things that he knows, and but also, and it wasn't. And this is what was ahead of its time too, right? Because yes, it was creepy. He said, I gave you a baby tonight. But he also gave her the choice.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he told her that he could stop it if she wanted to. Um, that it was her choice, and she accepted it. And I
Yeah.
really thought that was a moment ahead of its time too,
Yeah.
because usually it's like, I gave you a baby, you're gonna have a baby. No choice is given to the woman, especially during that time.
Yeah.
And I really thought that was really a cool moment, and something that still resonates now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this movie holds up, right? Like, it's not something where you're watching it and you're like, oh, that's so cringe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this wouldn't fly today. Like, you could tell this exact same movie, release it again now, and it would still work.
Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing about Carpenter is that his movies feel timeless. Like they feel of their time, don't get me wrong, they feel very 80s, but they also feel like because they are dealing in such interesting topics that you can watch them now and they still feel relevant to the modern day. And like you said, somebody could remake these. I don't want them to. I think that these are perfectly fine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against remakes. But we've already had two Carpenter remakes, The Fog and Assault on Precinct 13, and
And
they
they
didn't
were
do that
meh.
well. They were just meh. Yeah, they didn't have the same, flavor that his movies actually do. And it's like just leave them alone. His movies are
Yeah.
timeless enough.
And we've seen what happened with Halloween.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's what's interesting. It's just that his movies are so good and so timeless. Like that period from 78 to 88, he is unmatched. He did every one of those movies from Halloween to They Live is great. And he cannot be touched for that decade. Like that is a
At
perfect
all.
decade for a filmmaker to do. So,
Yeah, I mean, I- and come on, like, I mean, from a lot of people, especially like critics, they like to say like, well, these movies were bombs, or they're kind of cheesy, or they're
mhm.
this, but they all hold up because we're still watching them,
Mhm.
still like fangirling over these films, um, and still talking about like the importance or like all these different themes that exist with them. Like, you know, I could talk Starman. Because there's so much in this that is just so unique.
Yeah.
Um, in the way that they approach the story, and Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen, some of my favorite actors. I remember when I first fell in love with Karen Allen as an actress was when she did the made for TV movie about Challenger.
Oh, okay.
And because I used to watch that movie all the time when I was a kid because I was obsessed with Challenger.
Oh my gosh.
And,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, and then of course, she was in Sandlot. She's amazing. And I
Indiana
really liked,
Jones,
yes,
Scrooge.
she's
Yeah.
iconic.
Yeah.
And so, like seeing her in this film, I mean, it kind of shows, just why we still talk about a lot of the films that she did because
Hmm.
she has such an incredible range and way of bringing such a, like, I don't know, a light to the characters that she plays. And I really like that in this movie because this could have came out so corny, um, and cheesy, but there was just enough humor, just enough of like that, those heartfelt moments.
Yeah.
Nothing felt overacted or over the top or like out of the realm. I mean, yeah, it's an alien, but nothing felt like so out of the realm of possibility. Um, and I think that's what really made this film so interesting as well. Um, but yeah, like it holds up.
Yeah. No, it really does. It's amazing how well most of his movies hold up, especially like I said, the 78 to 88 run. Like They Live, even Big Trouble in Little China holds up. It's cheesy, it's goofy 80s fun, still holds up. I don't think they need to remake that. There's been talks for years about remaking Big Trouble in Little China. I'm like, please don't. It's good.
Yeah,
Just
because you
leave it
can,
alone.
yeah, leave it because it's one of those movies too where if you tried to remake it now, it would absolutely be a disaster
Oh yeah, absolutely.
because that movie could have been a disaster too, but it's a cult classic for a reason.
And technically,
Um,
technically, most of his movies have been disasters in terms of the box office, but
yeah,
I,
but
I
there,
really think that's been timing more than anything on most of his movies.
I totally agree with that because, you know, like I said, we still talk about these films.
Hmm.
Halloween is my favorite film. And I have a shrine next to my bed with of Michael Myers. Um, and people laugh and they're always like, why? My partner doesn't understand like my fascination with Michael Myers. But for me, and people laugh when I say this, but it's the most indigenous horror film that's not an indigenous horror film
Interesting.
because it's all about generational trauma.
Mm,
And
okay. Yeah.
you see, and I mean, it could even be a metaphor for colonization, right? Because you have Michael Myers, who would be like the embodiment of, like a physical embodiment of colonization, because he's just hunting down, destroying, um, no rhyme or reason. And, you have these victims who are just existing. I
Yeah.
mean, even in the first film, like there's really no reason for him to target Lori. And
No.
you really don't find anything out. And I think that kind of bungled it a little bit in the second film when they
Hmm.
introduced the idea of him being her brother. Because I thought it was absolutely terrifying that there was really no connection between them.
Yeah.
There was no reason for her to be targeted. There was no reason for any of them to be hunted down the way they were. It just
No.
was. And I
Yeah.
thought that was what made it terrifying. But, the new trilogy is what really makes that first Halloween even more fascinating for me.
Hmm.
Because the 2018, like the first Halloween, right? You're seeing the trauma happen. You're seeing the initial contact, like colonization.
Yeah.
But then you get to the 2018 Halloween and you get to see the impact that it had on her and her family and how she didn't recover. Like it wasn't something where she's like, oh, this is just something that would happen to me. Like it really impacted her in a foundational way for the rest of her life.
Right.
It affected her kids and her grandkids. And I thought that was a really unique continuation of that. But then the second one, Halloween Hills, terrible. I was so disappointed with the way that it played out, but I understood the concept because that
Right.
second one was about how that event impacted the larger community
Right.
outside of their family and how it kind of took on it like its own mind where people were reacting and making what happened to Lori and her family and her friends about them
Right.
and really like, evil dies tonight and given that mob mentality of it. I really thought that was fascinating. Was it executed well? Absolutely not. And then you have Halloween Kills. Again, people hated Halloween Kills. And I'm over there like, that was my favorite one
I liked it. I
because,
thought it was
yeah,
great.
I thought it was great, right? Because then because that last one was okay, what happens when you have Lori finally coming to terms like, okay, I have to confront this. Like there's no getting around this. And, between Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, she was Susie Homemaker. She was giving her granddaughter like a nice home. She was
Hmm.
baking and really trying to be more positive, like, okay, I'm healed. I'm over this. This is over, while also knowing that it wasn't and having that unease. And then, it was also like, okay, what happens when this trauma starts to change shape and get passed on, not necessarily to the original victims, but to somebody else?
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting because the whole thing comes down to, them having to confront it, confronting the evil face forward, naming it, knowing exactly how it impacted them, the stakes that there are to not addressing it, but also what happens when you finally defeat it? What happens when it's no longer there to hold you back? How do you actually heal and move on from that? And I thought it was very interesting, because in the movie, Lori is hopeful. um, the sheriff comes to drop off a fruit basket and they end up
Right.
talking and she's like, oh, you mentioned something about seeing cherry blossoms, and kind of shows this moment of like, okay, she's going to move on and heal. But in the novelization of the last one, she becomes the shape. She
Mm.
doesn't defeat that darkness. And it ends
Interesting.
with her just standing in the dark in her house and doing the Michael Myers heavy breathing. And I really like that too, right? Because that's the kind of reality of things is that trauma, you don't always heal from trauma. There
No.
are people who don't overcome it. And I really like that they were able to kind of give those two different paths.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm again, obviously, I'm a Halloween nerd, but I love John Carpenter films because like you can have these conversations about all these different themes that are there. That maybe, if you're like, again, if you're a nerd, you're going to pick up on these things. Um, and they're going to mean something a little bit more to you than just the average moviegoer, who are watching like just an entertaining film. But for, some of us nerds, we take it to a new level of weirdness. And I think Starman is one of those movies where we do that because,
Yeah.
this wasn't one of his more popular films. Um, but it absolutely is one that we're still watching, that we're still talking about. And like we said, it still holds up. And there's so many moments in this film, like, that just really make you think about things.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just, I don't know. It really just makes you stop and think about all these different things that we kind of take for granted as human beings.
Yes.
And even just like the ending. I really loved the ending of this film because it, yes, it was heartbreaking that they were never going to see each other. And he had to go but she also understood why.
Right.
And, he's like, but you're still going to have my kid. Like, this is what's going to happen. And, he gave her the last fear and he said, that our child will know what to do with it. And it ended on such a beautiful, I mean, it was absolutely stunning,
Yeah.
the ending visually, especially when the ship's coming down over the
Oh yeah.
crater, which, I have feelings about that stupid crater. Um, because I'm one of those people that goes and to visit where things have been filmed. Um, I love movies, and if I could go to a filming location and see, you know, this is where the magic happened, I love that. And the crater was one of those places because I love this movie. Um, that I went to see the meteor crater. And insane
No,
because
that's
you pay
awesome.
$30 to see a hole in the ground. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it. Like, yes, it's kind of beautiful, but it's still just a hole in the ground. And it is kind of cool that some of the set that they used for the ending of Starman is actually still down there because
Yeah.
it would cost too much for them to go and get it to remove it. Um, but it's down there. And I think that's pretty cool. And they do talk about the filming of Starman there. Like when
Yeah.
you're doing the guided tours and stuff, like they do talk about Starman. And I think that's really neat because, even after all these years, it's still relevant to that place and people still know when they're talking, letting you know, like, hey, Starman was filmed here. People do know the reference. And I
Yeah.
think that's really awesome.
No, that is very cool. I like that. Yeah. Um, no, I think I I like the ending because like you said, there's it's not a down ending. Yes, they're separating, but he doesn't die. The government kind of the one government guy who's like one guy, the scientist guy is chasing after them to learn. And he has a moment to actually let them go and kind of stymie the more military aspects of the government. And I like that part of it a lot because it just, it's and I think it's funny too because you have these parts of the movie where this is going on, but they're very small. The bulk of the movie is really him and her getting to know each other, him learning about humanity along the way and everything, which I thought was really good. It really helped, I think, in a lot of ways, the movie just be this really good, positive um, movie overall. This good positive message, and so I think when it gets to the end and everything, and it's not like we said, it's not a downer ending. He goes home and he leaves her with the baby and everything, and just it's such a positive ending that you're just I don't know, it's just it's great. um like I said, for a 10-year-old at the time when I saw it, I just loved it. I thought it was a really good movie. I mean, I didn't understand everything, of course, because 10-year-old can't you understand all the nuances of everything that was going on in the
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. Like I remember it being a good movie. I watched
Yeah.
it when I was younger, but watching it like as an adult and really
Oh
understanding all
man.
these different
Yeah.
themes, I mean, it's just like, oh, like this is incredible. Like I can't believe I was missing out on this as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, because I remember watching it. I remember the first time I watched it, um, my uncle rented it. And it was one of those movies that I actually picked out because of the cover. Because that's how we picked videos back in the day is they
Right.
had a really cool cover and it was like, oh, this is going to be good, which didn't always work out well,
No.
because some movies had really cool cover art and they were
And really
absolute
terrible
trash.
movies. Yep.
Yeah. But Starman was one of those ones where thankfully, that's not the way it turned out. It was actually a really good movie. I mean, the casting was perfect for this.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. No, agreed.
especially the little SETI guy. Um, what's his name? I want
Uh
to say like,
Hirsch, I think. Or no, Sherman.
yeah, Mark Sherman, and he was
Yeah.
played by Charles Martin Smith,
Yeah.
who, if you watched any movies,
In the
American
80s. Yeah.
Graffiti, like all these different films, The Untouchables, he's been in all these. He's a solid actor,
Yeah.
and I always love seeing him in films, but his role in this I really love because He was trying to be professional, but he was also really just geeking out,
All right.
knowing that there's an alien on Earth.
Yeah.
Because that moment when he goes in and he's like, I just want to have a moment to talk with him, the minute he sits down, he's geeking out. He's like, there's so much I want to ask you. Why are you here? And, just kind of jumps into it. And I really love that because, there's so many of us on Earth who would be in that same position. If we knew we were talking to an alien, like there wouldn't really be a fear, but there'd be a lot of curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of questions. And more importantly, take me with you.
All right. Yeah.
If you're going, like bring me on board. Take me with you. Let me see something else.
Well,
So I
and I think
really like,
go ahead, sorry.
oh, I was gonna say, I just really liked his character in that because he really embodied that well.
Yeah. No, I think that's what's interesting about it too, is because he comes from it from the human perspective. He is the human flip side of the coin of Starman's character. Because Starman is there to observe us and to learn about us. This guy wants to know about him. And so
Yeah.
it's like this learning experience for both of them. And that's all he wants it to be. He because he works for SETI, and so he's more about like actually learning about extraterrestrial intelligence and not on a you know on a negative way. So
Yeah, exactly. Because the minute that he learned that the government was planning to dissect Starman,
yeah.
he was like, oh, okay, I'm no longer team government. We're gonna have to
Right.
figure out how to help him escape. And, he just jumps in and risks everything to try and help them get away.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really unique too. Because it kind of showed that, given the opportunity that we can resist, like when we know. And I think that was a good message in this movie too, because so many times it just shows people going along with things with the idea of like, oh, we were just following orders.
Hmm.
And I really like that they had his character, being able to look at that and just automatically be like, no, this isn't going to happen. Because he was all on their side when he was just like, well, you're he would like reminding him that Starman was technically invited, and he was there kind of making sure the government didn't get too crazy with things, and
Yeah.
he was on board with like team government. But the minute he found out like that they didn't have the good intentions that they did, like that little switch flipped and he's like, okay, team Starman. And I
Yeah.
really like that they showed that because as human beings, especially now in this political climate, we're starting to see that more and more.
Yeah.
And, I think that was a really good moment in this film because it's so many films can go so dark with that, right? Like with the people just feeling hopeless or feeling like they're powerless and just this is the way it is. And
Yeah.
I really like that they did it. And they also kept it light. Like they didn't make it a heavy moment or anything. Um, there was still like a lot of lightness to this.
Yeah.
And and I really like that because especially with the ending, like um it didn't feel hopeless or even like, you know what it was? I'm going to tell you this. I think Pixar took a page from Starman
Oh.
because I had the same feeling, tearing up, getting emotional, in a good way that I had at the end of Lilo and Stitch 2
Okay.
when, when they thought Stitch was dying
Right.
and that he was dead and that, this was it. And then of course he comes back and everything's good. This was the same thing because when he was injured, Starman, and he was dying
Yeah, he was dying because he could only be on Earth for like that
for
3 or 4 days. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
So he was dying, and there was that moment when you're like, oh no, they're gonna kill him because well, that's typically what happens in these movies.
right.
And then of course, the ship comes down and the light surrounds him and he gets fully healed, but he has to leave. And I really think that was a really cool moment too, because that's also when I think Jenny fully realized that she was totally in love with this alien.
Right.
Um, and wanted to be with him, and not out of just grief or thinking that, oh, this is a husband replacement, this is me getting him back.
Yeah.
Um,
She
but
fell in love with the person that he was specifically.
exactly.
So,
And I
yeah.
really liked that moment because the
Yeah.
way that she kind of clung to him, and she's like, and he tells her, like, I can't take you with me because you're gonna die on my planet. And she's like, I don't care, I don't care. And he's like, I do. And I really love that moment because it kind of brought the story like full round. Like it wasn't just a one-sided love. Like he actually
Right.
really was capable and able to fully love her too.
Right. Yeah. Um so that brings up what I mentioned earlier is that there was a TV series that came out in 1986. A couple of years afterward, they made a TV series where it kind of followed up. It was 15 years after the events of the film. And this time he comes back and clones a different person. This time played by Robert Hayes, um, and who comes back to uh, guide his now teenage son, uh, Scott Hayden Jr., while they try to avoid a government agent and find Jenny, who's missing. So it like each episode was kind of like a fugitive style thing where they went from place to place and they would help people, which was like a big thing in the 80s too. You had people who were like, always these stories of like somebody going from town to town and helping somebody random. Um,
Yeah, like you know what the TV series reminded me. I don't think I watched more than like a couple episodes of it,
right.
but it kind of reminded me of Quantum Leap.
Yeah. Quantum Leap, The Hulk, The Fugitives. There's like a whole, it was like a cottage industry. A Team was kind of the same way, so it was always this
Yeah.
like people helping, random people. And that helped move the story along, just, always one step ahead of somebody chasing them. So, uh,
Yeah, because I'm trying to think if this was also around the time of like Highway Heaven and
yeah,
because I
yeah.
mean that was like it was such a popular kind of trope to have at the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
that was a huge trope in the 80s.
yeah, like I've been watching a Little House on the Prairie,
Mm.
and you can kind of start seeing that shift.
Yeah. Highway
Like
to Heaven was 84 to 89. So yeah.
yeah,
So
and you can
definitely
kind of
within
start
that.
seeing that
Yeah.
happen within Little House on the Prairie.
Mhm.
And when Michael Landon left, um, that's when Highway to Heaven started. And, I was cracking up. I was like, oh, they basically used Little House on the Prairie to kind of
Just
test
backdoor
this idea.
pilot.
Like,
Yeah.
is this gonna work? Because like the last episode that he was really in, I think was season 7. I think there were 8 seasons. I think it was season 7. But like the season finale was very weird. Um, compared to the entire season. They had a lot of weird episodes, but that
Yeah.
season finale was super weird because, his one of his adopted sons got shot and they weren't sure he was going to make it. And Michael Landon was just like, he's going to make it. And he started getting like super religious and believing that God was talking to him. And he took the son who was like bedridden and basically comatose
Mm.
out into the wilderness because nobody else believed, but he did. And he knew God was going to heal him. And they get out into the wilderness and he decides, oh, I'm going to build an altar. And once I finish this altar, well, he'll be healed. And then, of course, he's out there and he gets his beard, and Mr. Edwards comes and tries to talk some sense into him. And he's like, no, I got to do this. And, he does it. And he turns around and the kid's like, hello. I mean, it was so weird. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really weird. But I think that was kind of like the pilot run to be like, okay, let's
Yeah.
see how religious we could get. Um, let's see if this is going to work. Like if
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
going to watch. And because after that, that's when Highway to Heaven took off and
yeah, yeah. It was a
it,
huge show in the 80s.
yeah, and then of course you start seeing more TV shows with that kind of like that same pattern kind of popping up, maybe not religious,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but I mean, I watched that and I was cracking up because I was just like, oh, is this where this came from?
Yeah, I just remember loving the Starman series because it was just a continuation of it, and it was like two alien, like an alien and a half alien kid, like just using their powers and stuff. I mean, it was minimal sci-fi, but it was just enough to get me going at 12 years old when it came out. So, it was a lot of fun for what it was. So, and it was interesting because I think it's the only TV series that's ever been done based off of a John Carpenter movie.
A movie,
So
yeah.
yeah. So but yeah, no, it was this movie just it still resonates like we said, and it still is just it's a great hopeful movie in so many ways, and it's definitely if you've gotten all the way through this episode and you haven't watched the movie before you listen, you should definitely go and watch this movie because it
Oh
is
yeah,
it's
because we
really
dropped a
really good.
lot of spoilers here.
Yeah, a lot of spoilers. But yeah, no, it is such a good movie. It's um I don't know. It's just it's just very indicative of John Carpenter and his style and everything while also being this like um just this great like I want to like it is a love story, but it's not even like the love story that happens. Yes, that's a good thing, but like I don't even think of it as a love story most of the time. I
Oh
think of it as
yeah.
it's a love
Right.
letter to America at the time and just humanity. It's a love letter to humanity. And just what is possible. Um and in a way that's also not so sugary and so um like in your face about it either.
Yeah, because it's
Because
everything is
yeah,
very subtle. And I think that's what I
yeah,
really enjoyed about it because they really let the characters breathe.
yeah,
Like they weren't trying to rush the development. They weren't trying to push a love story down your throat.
yes.
It's just it felt very organic. Um, and you could also see the struggle within like their interactions too, to really try and figure out like, am I really feeling this way? What am I feeling? Is this okay even, And I
Right.
really liked that because it was very subtle. Um, and when everything started, like even when they had sex, everything just felt very organic and
Hmm.
natural, not something that was just there for, that gratuitous sex scene that was so
Right.
popular in the 80s. Um, and it wasn't raunchy or exploitative. It was just like a very sweet and tender moment that really showed both of these actors like vulnerability. And like I said, Jeff Bridges,
Hmm.
um, watching his facial expressions and the reactions that he was having, he killed that scene. Like
Yeah.
I totally see why he got his nomination because man, I mean everything I mean this movie is probably I think one of his best.
Oh yeah.
Um
Agreed.
because he had to play so many different humans in one.
Yeah.
Because I also think the thing that was really funny too was the scene where she tells him she's going to the bathroom
Right.
and she writes the letter, kidnapped,
Yeah.
help me. And, he is curious because, she told him, like, here's the man's bathroom. I'm a woman. This is my bathroom. Do you understand? And he doesn't understand, but he goes into the man's bathroom and a guy comes in and uses the bathroom and he makes it very awkward and the guy's like fuck off,
Right.
and and he's just like huh, and then he goes and he looks in the woman's bathroom, like as soon as she leaves he goes in to see what that's about, and then he sees the letter, but because he really doesn't comprehend things, he doesn't realize what it is until they're in the car and he's like what is kidnap?
Kidnap it. Yeah.
Yeah, kidnapped. And I thought that was really funny because she could have made some kind of excuse, but she didn't. Again, she opened up with the vulnerability and was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, he really doesn't understand. let me try to reason with him.
Yeah.
And tells him like it's very scary to be with somebody who looks like your dead husband, and you have a gun pointed at me. And she's like, if you're going to use it, just go ahead. And like, and there's that moment where it really looks like he's going to.
Yeah.
um and I really like that scene because it's just I don't know, I just love this film.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is such a good film. And definitely one, one of the best Carpenter's made. Um, Definitely worth watching anytime. And like we said, it holds up even today. So it's definitely worth the watching because it's just relevant. It just it works so well. And as much as I'm okay with remakes, I just don't feel like this one and most of Carpenter's movies ever need to be remade. So, and
Oh yeah.
apparently they were going to remake this. Sean Levy, who's done he did Deadpool and Wolverine, he's doing the new Star Wars movie that's coming out soon. Um he's he did the Night at the Museum movies. He was going to remake it at some point, but then dropped out of it because he just could not find an angle on it that would be worth adapting again. So
Yeah,
like he was just
there's
like,
no
it's not worth
way.
adapting because it's already as good as it's gonna get. There's nothing we could do to make it better or change it. Like that's it. That's exactly it. If you remade it today, it would be remaking it for modern times with modern actors, and that would literally be it. And it's just not worth it. It's just keep it the way it is. So
Yeah, I mean I don't want to say it's perfect, but
no,
it's pretty darn perfect because I mean
it's good for what
these
it is. Yeah,
exactly, and the storytelling very specific to the 80s.
yeah,
Um it Yeah, there's no way that it would be able to be done. I mean, I wouldn't want to see this remade at all
yeah,
because I could only imagine the level of cringe because of the way that, they approach love stories, and it'd
yeah,
be like a soap opera.
yeah. No, for sure. All right. Is there anything else you want to say about this before we wrap things up?
Y- The only other thing I can say about this film is just watch it. Because this
Definitely.
is also one of those films where I feel like when I talk to people, um, and they say they've never seen it,
Yeah,
and you kind of look at him side eye like, were you raised in a barn? So yeah, definitely watch this because there are movie nerds who will give you that look. You don't
yeah.
want to be the uncool nerd who hasn't seen Starman.
If you have not watched the 78 to 88 run of of
Yeah,
John Carpenter,
exactly.
you need to go watch all that. Like it is an unbroken run, and it would have been an even more unbroken run to In the Mouth of Madness if he hadn't done Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
so
this is required John Carpenter watching.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, no, 100% check it out. It is as of the time of recording, it is available on Tubi to watch. So if you haven't watched it, or if you have watched it and it's been a while and you don't own it, go back and watch it. I watched it on the excellent Scream Factory disc that came out a few years ago. Um, so I have most of John Carpenter's movies on um, disc, most of those from Scream Factory. So,
Same,
because yeah,
same.
yeah, I mean,
Because
they
like,
put out quality product.
yeah, and then plus the commentary.
Oh yeah,
I think, we're missing that now with streaming. We're missing that
yes.
commentary that really, you know, if you were a fan, just knowing that backside of the story of like what the filmmakers were thinking or the actors were thinking during different scenes. Oh, those were the heydays.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Oh, well, you guys can find me. I'm pretty much everywhere as Johnnie Jae. But also check out Red Pop News. We are getting ready to have our 1 year anniversary next month. Super excited. So check us out at www.redpopnews.com.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I very much enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And for being able to talk about Starman.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This was very fun. And I appreciate you coming on extra late for me as well. So I
Oh,
do
no
like
problem.
the extra late times, which works out a lot better for me. So
Yeah, I think this is about the time that my brain starts working really well too.
yeah, that was the funny thing was like when I asked you to, it's like I think when we when I had gotten you when you volunteered to be on for this episode, I noticed that you would be on late at night. Like through Instagram, it shows like if you've got that as an option, it would show if you were on or not. And so I was like, oh, she's up late. Oh, yeah. So I was like, okay, this could be good. So
Yeah, I
it
usually
worked
don't go
out.
to bed till like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah, same. So all right. Well, thanks again, and we'll hopefully get you on again sometime soon.
All right, that sounds great.
Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is produced and hosted by Robert Clark. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast by going to creepyandgeeky.com and clicking on any of the social links. If you'd like to follow me, you can find my links at geekthulu.com. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.